and it's like a whole thing. So that'll be a little interesting.
Hi.
There's Reggie.
Hey, Reggie.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I didn't sleep that great, so I'm feeling like a little,
Yeah.
Every so often I have a night like that. I get it.
yeah. Had a 3.5-hour meeting with the chief yesterday. Zapped me a little bit.
Heard.
Right, chief?
Yeah.
And we started looking at that manual. Oh my God, just in the printed, in printed form.
Yeah. I'm going to celebrate when I'm done putting that on the computer.
That you are. To get you like, I don't know, this is recording. Okay, that's okay. Some kind of beverage will get you something, Ashley.
Yeah.
To celebrate. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm playing Fuzz Buzz.
Chief, I was able to get Bob Nuzzo on the phone today.
Okay.
And had a good conversation with him. He's going to try. He gets off at, I think he said either almost 4 or 4:30. So by the time he gets home, we'll be done. But he's still going to, I talked to him about being able to watch the meeting and then still give him feedback and just, so he can definitely still be a part of the process. For sure.
I'm going to check my email real quick, make sure nobody
Said they couldn't.
having trouble.
Okay.
So, did you read the manual last night, Reggie?
What did you say?
Read the manual last night?
Was I reading the manual last night?
Yeah, our manual,
Oh, sure. I, fell asleep with it, under my chin.
Maybe that's why you didn't sleep so well.
That's why I didn't sleep so well. All that policy going through my head.
Why I have gray hair now,
Right. John Hebner just texted me. He's getting on now.
Okay.
You said you were buying donuts.
And actually, what I'm going to do, maybe talking to the chief, is on like next Wednesday, send an agenda, just to start so everybody has an idea.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Keeps the flow of the meeting going too.
Right. There's Anula.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Is it Friday yet?
Close, but not quite. And I think that's Tam.
Hey, Reggie. Hello, everybody.
Hey. How are you?
Oh,
Good. How about you?
Good. Are you enjoying? Where are you? You at the Cape or remind? Yeah.
Yes, I'm at the Cape. I am at the Cape. And I have grandchildren in the background, so I'll do my best.
That's all right.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello,
Hey, Chief.
hello, how are you, Tamara?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm just gonna hang on a few more minutes here. So we got Vanya, Rachel, John, and is that it?
Yep, that should be it.
Okay.
And you said Bob couldn't make it.
Bob couldn't make it. Yeah.
Okay. So yep.
Ashley, I'm gonna come by tomorrow. Do you still have some USBs?
I do. Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to come by tomorrow. I think I could get out of work a little early.
Imagine you have what, Ashley, like 7 of them? You have everybody except for me, right?
I think I gave you and Chief.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of those to go around.
Yep.
Weekend homework.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
So,
You have to do Lexi.
email and password. Okay.
You guys, I'll come back and eat together, all right? I gotta go home and shower and change and do this and that, all right?
So, Grandma, what's my chocolate movie? I don't know, Lex. About that wine, I don't know.
Go look around the bed over there. Yeah. We're waiting for someone.
What's the weather like there, Tam?
Today, well,
See
you know,
some sun?
it's been sunny today, but it looks like there's a haze from the West Coast fires up here.
I saw on the news that in
Yeah.
DC they were saying that near the monuments that there's a haze from
Yeah.
from the smoke. So, and I guess there's more of that to come.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy.
Get out. Sorry.
It's okay. Hi. Hey, John.
Hey everyone,
Hi, John.
Oh,
good to see you.
Go with Mom. I'll see you in a little bit.
Give them a couple more minutes. How are you, John?
I'm good. I just gotta step away and make a quick call, but as soon as I start going, I'll be back.
Okay. Just shoot them a text quickly. If not, we're going to get going. You don't have anything from Rachel Ashley, right? You still don't
I
have.
do not.
Okay. Just gonna go to the Zimbra email and see. It looks like most everybody got that email. All right, so I think, you know what, let's just go ahead and get started. So hi again, everybody. Good to see your faces. I thought we would start today. I know where we left off from what I saw in the notes last week. I just asked folks to be thinking about their vision for the work that we will be doing. And
Bluetooth connection.
or some, some things that you'd like to see us, some areas of focus that you think would be important during the time that we're working with each other. So does anyone have anything that they kind of have thought about since we met last week, or any, focus areas, your own vision, some of your own thoughts? Euler? Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Reggie.
How are you?
Good. I'm looking to see where everybody is.
Everybody's here
Oh,
except
wait,
for Tanya.
Hi.
Hey, Rachel.
So,
I'm trying to turn on. I realize I have to find another spot in the house. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm muting and listening.
Okay. So,
I can start, Reggie.
go ahead, Tam. Great.
All right, I've been reading through the first part of this pretty carefully because it's the part that really interests me as a social worker, and also as the work I do with Family of Woodstock. So the parts that I find really interesting so far
I'm having trouble connecting to the last Bluetooth device.
my speaker's talking,
Bluetooth ready for
have
phone.
to do with the vision of the community and how we include everybody in all portions of the community. I wasn't able actually to come in and get one of the flash drives before I leave, so I won't be able to, Chief, to see the policies and procedures so far. I also had some questions, and maybe it's included here, and forgive me because it's my first meeting.
It's okay.
On complaints, types of complaints, how many have to do with criminal complaints versus complaints more along the lines of substance abuse disorder or mental health challenges, those kinds of things, and what parts of the population generate the most complaints of each kind, because I'm interested in how collaboration works between all of the different groups. There's a lot here on youth and how youth participate and how youth see our community resources that I'm interested in. And then the population that Family of Woodstock works with the most, which are street people, people of lower socioeconomic class standing, people sometimes with untreated mental health challenges and substance use disorders, and others who feel, based on their own values, that they are more of a countercultural, value-based community, and how we include all of that. I'm also interested in the training pieces, and Chief, I don't know which of the trainings that CIT do, how many of our officers have gone through that, and trainings with implicit bias trainings, cultural competency training, how we do more suicide prevention and mental health first aid trainings within the community. And are there other trainings that all community members could be a part of, and could this be a commingled community initiative that trains all of our people in mental health first aid techniques, in suicide prevention and intervention, and how we as a community start to look at that kind of integration more closely. So that's some of what I was thinking.
Yep. When you just mentioned Tamara about the CIT training,
Mhm.
they have to a 4-hour block of training today at the Sheriff's Department.
Oh, great.
Great. And we had him trained about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 other full-time officers, that were trained, but they unfortunately they left for other departments. But
Okay.
my understanding, Kevin called me and said that we have spots reserved for a training for next month.
Right.
It's a 40-hour training
Yeah.
for each officer.
Yeah, it's a
But
lot of
that-
training. Yeah.
Could you explain someone what CIT stands for? I don't know what the
Do you
acronym
want
means.
to say something, Chief, or do you want me to?
But if you want to touch on it tomorrow, then that'd be fine.
Okay, it's a critical incident
Incident.
training, and it happens through the SIM committee throughout the county is heavily invested in that. That's strategic integration something, but it's a county collaborative on how we strategically work more closely with each other, and they drive a lot of training. I know Officer Patty was in it last year when I was part of it. Chief, I don't know if she's still around, but the training itself goes really well. Please don't do this.
She's actually working for us today. She came in at
She
3
is?
o'clock.
Great. And she was really enthusiastic in her participation, I noticed. And that's, I think, to the credit of you and our police force, that we already do some of this work that's being suggested, and how can we improve on it?
I also have another female officer, Gabriella. She's trained into that. Also she's a part-time officer, but she works for multiple agencies, and she it certainly brings a lot to the table. We're certainly interested. More and more of our officers trained into it.
Yeah.
And we're certainly appreciative of the county to have that available to us.
Yeah. And Reggie, I think I misspoke. It's crisis intervention training.
Crisis intervention.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the 40-hour training.
Yeah. As someone who does a lot of training in suicide prevention, intervention, and mental health first aid, and youth mental health first aid, and all the other things that Family of Woodstock promotes, I really like people to take it more than once. And I think we could look at that as well, that even if you've had it once, cultural changes are hard, and they take time, and they take support. So how do we as a community support the cultural changes that we're looking for here as a community, working together to make those cultural changes? And I think that's something to keep foremost in my mind anyway, is how to support that kind of change. It takes a lot of safety on everybody's part and a lot of support to make those changes. So I will be quiet now.
No, that's great. Thank you, Tam.
I'd love to follow.
Go for it.
With a couple of things. First is, I wonder how because I'm late again, and please excuse me. I'm in the middle of a major transition and move, and I'm just out of range in Bearsville. So, do we do a little check-in? I mean, I know we only have a short period of time, but
Well, that's what we're
this way. This is how are we given a couple minutes? Have we at some point maybe decide or think about how we structure some of our decisions and things like that? And also just looking at and thank you for facilitating, Reggie, I appreciate it.
Of course.
Just thinking as far into emergent strategies as we can. I think that Tamara really, I think for us and how we're going to approach this, and since you weren't here, Tam, I just quickly want to reiterate and also mention that I believe as I was driving today through town, I was thinking about how important it is that diversity training, diversity, that in order to do this work, we're going to have to be collaborative throughout the entire Woodstock, municipal experience. Because, and I mentioned it last time, because what we're dealing with right now, the police force, it has to take on so much of the this different departments, different areas of focus, and the only way that's gonna change is if we look at this in a holistic way. And so as we embark upon this, and I'm so glad you're here, Tam, because your perspective is so important. How are we really going to look at this? Because it is I have skimmed through some of this, and we'll have some time. I'm moving, so I've just been completely unable to focus. But my experience growing up here and having been on the other side, this the police force, having been in I've experienced so many areas of this town and this community, and I'm still feeling like the fallout of how the design has happened. And I know I brought this up when the Wake Up What's Next conversation came up, because we were like, we're going to do a rally, and all the kids were like, we're in, and then they just burned out because it's just so hard. Everyone's in survival burnout mode right now. So we're in a place where I believe, I know that we went and we put money in, and we spent time on a comprehensive plan that was pre-COVID, with absolutely no anti-oppressive lens whatsoever. Very minimal. Led by, people who try to look in that direction, but there was none. So as we're approaching this is going to be a very difficult conversation. We've been asked, the governor's like, this is going to be a difficult conversation. How do we, before we tackle this, because I don't necessarily think jumping around is a great idea and picking and choosing throughout it, but I think that if we really take a look throughout this group, through this committee who's here right now, how are we going to approach this? Are we going to go through this because the book says do this? Or are we going to really, really dig in? Because Tamara has you have an eye on what's going on in this town in a way that when I look at it, I've seen you hold everything from making sure people have, myself one Christmas had a Christmas, to supporting, we just lost Jeff. And Jeffrey is he is a perfect example of what this town does and has done and put upon Tamara and families community, and the police have been the two entities that have really handled that conversation here. And when you look at what our town has done, which is, think about it. The chair of the zoning board of appeals, or is it the zoning board? Is a freaking contractor who's making money off of the decisions they're making. Literally, there's no conflict of interest conversation here. So we're looking at levels throughout this town municipal governance that has not actually, and in Woodstock, as a person of actual color, our color, the people of color here are this is a classist issue more in this community, as well as the fact that we've never made people of color part of our community in any way. The only two Black men that I grew up seeing on a regular basis were rapists. One of them is still walking around town. Lincoln used to solicit women right off the bus. And until that man died, women were fearful of that Black man in this community. Now we have one other one who's Deli, who's managed to get away with it for years, terrorizing young women. And that is the example of Black men in Woodstock, besides Reggie and a couple of people, right? And so when you look at the tapestry of Woodstock, you see some people who look very drunk when you get to the green. You see a couple of brown people on the green and out and about. And then there's a conversation about low-income housing. And all you see is that face, the natty daddies, right? And then when people come here to buy a house or to come look, they go, oh, look, low-income housing for the natty daddies. This is the way that community design creates the image that creates the young people who have nothing. We have not had anything for our young people in this community until Paul Green, and the youth center is underfunded and undersupported. And so as we talk about police reform, we need to talk about governance reform. And so how do we approach this for real and actually make a difference? Because if we just follow the book, and I think we should, we're going to see a lot of how this community has been designed to extract and exclude the people of color, people of lower income. We have designed a community that creates jobs to support privileged white people. Sorry, but that's the truth of what this town is. And here we are. And Anula is a person who has a new, fresh perspective, who's been here, came here 5 years ago, 6 now?
Something like that, yep.
Right? And so this perspective of like, what did you see when we got here? And so how are we, I really want to look at this, and I will be quiet and I'll listen, but I really think this is something that we have the power to like recreate who we are as a community. And we just got housed by the flight out of New York. We have no control or anything over what's about to happen in this community unless we take it. And this is a very strong place to do it, because the recommendations we make are going to affect everybody.
I agree. I'd like to use that as a transition, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
So, yeah, that was really, and some of it I'm going to tag off of what Rachel already said, and Tamara as well. But I kind of organized the areas in my mind in categories, buckets, and then not all inclusive, but some things that are important to me, and the rest I thought, if these buckets are approved and in this conversation of reimagining what our police force looks like, well, then we could expand those as necessary. And I had the privilege of working with Chief to put new policy in place before any of this happened. I mean, this was not a topic that hit the news yet. I mean, we knew it was a problem in the country, but certainly before the explosion of attention. So I want to say I'm looking forward to it. I think some of these areas might be a little bit difficult and some might be easy, but here's my take at what I would like to see addressed at minimum in this committee. Are we a committee or a commission?
We're a committee.
We're a committee. All right. So I would like to have an open conversation around the types of calls that the police respond to and should respond to. So somebody touched earlier on mental health calls to transport elderly, things like that. Is there space for somebody in the police department who might not be a police officer or a police officer with different training? I'd like to explore that. I would like to address the how we handle youth in our community and how we respond to those kinds of calls. What's okay, what's not okay. I would like to address, I'd like to revisit just to make sure that we have, I think of things in terms of, like Bill would say, making it a little bit better. So it's good. In some cases, it's really good, but there's room to make things better. And in some cases, it's not good, right? But I'd like to revisit how we address and work with and interact with non-English speaking people in our community and the LGBTQ community, right? So we've learned a little bit more through the news and seen what different police departments are doing that we don't want to do. So partly by addressing this, it protects our police department because they don't have to do something crazy, right? Because we've addressed it, we've thought about it, and we say, no, we're not going to do that, or yes, we are going to do this. I would like to revisit and put a period maybe at the collaboration with the federal government, specifically ICE and CBP. We should talk about that.
CBP, Anula.
Border Patrol.
Okay.
So as an activist, as the chair of the Human Rights Commission, I do have a concern seeing that I'm seeing US citizens be picked up. And yes, they're released hours later with severe PTSD because they're activists. And while I think we're in a bubble, I'd like to have that conversation. Another aspect, I hope it's okay, right? I'm just
Oh,
gonna.
yeah, come on. This is what we,
Just a few
yeah,
more.
that's what,
Okay. You
that's
asked
fine.
for some ideas, so here
This
they
is
are.
what, no, this is what we want. So,
I would like to talk about technology. So as we move into a digital age, how are we going to handle the use of facial recognition tools, cameras? What do we want to see? What don't we want to see? So this kind of touches on something that Rachel talked about last week, just in passing, about somebody who had like military-like equipment. It might make us uncomfortable here. And we know that Chief is probably not going to drive a tank down Tinker Street, but fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you know, all of us are somewhere else and somebody could be driving that tank down the street at the rate we're going. I'd like to talk about what is acceptable use of technology, and also from, you know, do we here have to worry about digital crime? Maybe, maybe not, but the conversation, I think this is a great forum to have that conversation. Community relations. So I know that this was something in the works pre-COVID. We were talking about coffee and cops, and you know, I think that this is imperative that the community get to know our officers and the officers get to know the community. So we need to figure out, in the middle of a COVID pandemic, what are we going to do? Can we do something that is a virtual get to know your police officers, get to know your community event? And finally, well, so I'm toward the end.
finally, go ahead.
You know, volunteer officer requirements. I'm not familiar with it, so I'd love to have that conversation here and see how we feel about it. And just to kind of, for my own education, and I'd like to discuss the possibility of recruiting youth from Woodstock and the surrounding areas, maybe for a junior police force or something, some idea like that, to start to get younger people, younger men and women involved in working with Chief and, you know, our great police force, right? And whether they end up here or somewhere else, can we help to facilitate a great approach toward policing? So I don't know. Those are my things. I'm sure those are at least some of my things.
It's just some, Anula. Oh my God.
You asked, Reggie.
That's great. Thank you, Anula. John?
Yeah, so I mean, I agreed strong-heartedly with, you know, everything that's been said. Just some thoughts expanding off of that. First, I think, you know, from my experience, in my 5 years in the legislature, in the last year and a half, I've been on the county law enforcement committee. And I would really, you know, it's about, you know, what information do we want and, you know, who we want it for, which I think, you know, has been extremely helpful, especially since Sheriff Figueroa has been in, and we've been provided much more open, a much more open approach in terms of transparency from the police to the sheriff's office in terms of, you know, actual data, like we talked about. You know, what is the breakdown, you know, versus, you know, substance abuse calls versus violent calls, versus, you know, smaller issues. You know, if there's, you know, whatever data is available to us, I think we should try and, you know, capture that and analyze that. In addition, of course, to the, you know, the human experience of, you know, a diverse group of Woodstock organizations and people who see it from the forefront. And, you know, I think combined, that's the most powerful approach and will allow us to kind of attack some of these actionable items. And I think, you know, also an inventory too, while we're making these choices, and something I'd be happy to facilitate from the county level, but also the state level and federal level of what is available to us right now. Like, you know, last call I mentioned mobile mental health crisis unit from the county, like what is available to us that we are capturing and utilizing, and what's, you know, where can we reach further? I think, you know, what Anula touched on in terms of technology is a huge thing. But again, that budget thing, concept, I would also really like just to see, and maybe Ashley can help us just capture this out of the most recent town budget, just a holistic view of the police department's budget and, ensuring that, and taking a look at maybe things can be utilized in different ways, but increase productivity and results, in terms of technology, where are we on body cameras and things like that, versus which could be a positive for both our protecting our police officers, but also giving the community comfort and the level of transparency. I know that's not cheap and something like that. So then what grant opportunities can we explore, things like that. But also, also looking at our police structure. I know I've had talks with Chief, I've had talks with other folks that have been as part of the Woodstock police force, both that I've grown up with, that I graduated high school with. And, we have a, revolving issue where, because of budgetary constraints, we have a lot of part-time officers and they work very hard, but also in terms of a model in community policing, what can we do to have, one, local people be, come into the department based on what Anula said. I know just personally, if I, have a question or something, I like talking to a police officer that I grew up with, or I know from, playing high school sports with, or, just that I grew up around. So again, the youth center, I think a collaboration with that. I agree, Rachel, that's been extremely underfunded. I think the issues of youth investment in this community go, far beyond my 32 years without just as someone that was born and raised right in the village. And, but I think that this type of information gathering and establishing the information we think we need to make decisions on, once we get to, the actual actionable items that are needed to, at the end of the day, which what we have to do is satisfy this report to the state and the town. But again, the more involvement we get from the outside, the more buy-in we're going to get when we're presenting it to the town and submitting it. So that's kind of my overall, thoughts. But again, main points being, what information do we want and who do we want it from? And, collecting also an inventory of what's available to us, and having, just a view. I think because this is somewhat built around, budgetary, the whole concept is we don't get any state support unless we complete this report. The budget has to be, something we strongly look at in terms of ensure we're, achieving every goal we want to, that we establish out of this committee.
Yes, I also want to quickly just mention that a couple of things. One is I believe that the sooner we invite the community to participate in this conversation, the better, because, and obviously it can get crazy. So I don't know how that is working out. I know we're going to be doing community meetings, and the categorization. I love the buckets. Like if we can bucket and be continuing that, but also there's other there's so many other communities that are surrounding us that are doing this same, creating these committees that are interconnected, right? So like in Olive, for instance, Daphne De Jesus, who is on the Onteora board, right?
Mm-hmm.
School board. She's over there, and I would venture to guess I don't know who's working with her, but she might be able to use some help, as much as, the importance of us. We are all so close as communities. And I mentioned Tamara last week. I still think it's something we should consider when we do get into the conversation around like opioid use in this community. I'm on a speakers bureau with Bob Stutman, who was the DEA, New York head of DEA. And when I spoke to him, when we lost about 8 years ago, when we lost a bunch of young people, or 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago, I think.
I talked to him, and he immediately was like, Rondout, Saugerties, Kingston, New Paltz, Woodstock, boom, boom, boom. Like he made those connections together where it was like, these are the places that you're going to need to connect with if you're going to address the opioid issues, right? And so like that keeps ringing in my head as I'm looking at this. Once we stabilize here together, that there's some things that we may be able to share also, like, you know, we know there's already a mobile unit. We're also in a place where we're losing our volunteer paramedics and our fire departments because of the way of, back again to the design of how we've been designing this community. So how are we going to address that? Because we're already on a low right now, where we were talking last week where, you know, Chief was saying how it's like, you know, 3 hots and a cop is like, that's not the way to handle that, but now that's not even an option. And so what are we really looking at here as we approach moving forward? And I'm going to be like swirly and idea-y until I sit down and riff off of each other, because we're all in a similar place. But I think that's important to continue to look at. How are we really going to address this? Because it's not just on the police.
Agreed. It's much larger. And the work of this committee, I mean, I think this can generate other work, or not can, I believe it will generate other areas. And really all the things you mentioned, Rachel, Anula, all of you that have said, I mean, our work is limited, obviously, to policy, you know, the policy of our law enforcement, but it is much deeper than that. And from my, you know, that social work background, I know that holistic approach, you know, if you have a child who's, you know, not showing up for school or something, it's more than their attendance record, like what's going on at home. There's so many other issues. So I believe that there is an opportunity here. And I think we've got a lot of great people that are part of this group to really push ourselves and the town, and maybe to force the town to kind of put it out there to say, this is what, yes, this is our law enforcement. There's so many other issues that need to be addressed. And we can't solve it all in the report that we're going to submit to the state. But I think the work that we do with each other can lead us in a direction away from some of the things that we're seeing now. Definitely, I'm with all of you that spoke about the youth and underfunding, rural areas. What is there to really do other than, you know, get drunk or smoke weed, right? Or hang out in the woods. So what are we pouring into? Something I've been thinking about as all of this has been going on, especially this year, is what are we pouring into our young people? Again, I know that won't be, you know, and we can't really get into every single issue and organizing around that here, but there are important topics, and thinking, what are we doing to pour into our young people to give them things to get involved in, so that drugs and alcohol are not the first things that they're going to. You know, so I'm really with all of you that had great feedback or great questions.
There's one more thing, and I'm sorry.
Rachel, quick, because I want to go for
really quickly. Woodstock. This is the other thing. We are a town that people are looking at from all over the globe. We have an opportunity to actually to look at models, to move in a direction that is supportive in a bigger way than just checking this off. So I'm going to work on creating some buckets for how to and what we may be cashing into. And if anyone else wants to talk on outside of this conversation around that we can be really looking at sort of cross-referencing and beginning to build those places where those recommendations actually, those, you know, we're filling these buckets with some solutions, because it's time, because it's going to just be filling out paperwork and creating filling a requisite from the state.
Right.
That's just a waste of time.
Agreed. Anybody else?
Anyway.
Sorry, Rach.
Hi, it's Anya. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So if we're going above and beyond what the state wants, can we just like do what the state wants first and then keep going? Like, will they still help us with that, or like, are they going to be finished once we
Will
live
who
up to
help
an
us with that, Vanya?
What?
When
What was the question?
when you ask who will be helping out, what do you mean? You mean the state?
Yes, I mean, once we live up to the state's expectations of us,
Mhm.
what is their involvement after that?
Well,
Will
I
they
don't.
be like,
I can't answer that question. I believe. I mean, they're looking for every town and every village to look at their law enforcement policy, right, and to come up with some changes that they will approve. That basically the town board will approve, and then pass it on to the state. And then my understanding is they look at that if they feel like it's adequate and that we've done some of that work, they will approve our budget from the state. But that doesn't mean, so beyond that, my impression is that the state isn't offering at this point anything after that. But that doesn't mean that the work and the things that we come up with from this committee that we can't continue, whether it's this group or not. It doesn't mean that our work has to stop, or the things that we come up with or want to work on or focus on have to stop beyond this committee. Does that answer your question?
yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we were just talking about, the last meeting where I was asking everybody to share their vision, if they had any things they wanted to focus on. So did you have anything to share around that?
Me personally?
That you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I'm always looking forward to bringing people of my generation into things. I don't know that we're quite at that step yet. So I don't know if that's like a thing that we should talk about right now. But my focus was also more training rather than like reactionary, what do we do afterwards? Like more like a proactive, like let's not have it happen rather than let's see what happens after.
Right,
you know?
after the fact.
So there's that. And then I don't know how to like verbalize changing a culture of an area, but I don't know that like a frat mentality within the police department is healthy for anything that we're trying to do. So maybe like, this is a broad term, but like a decolonization course. If we could get the state to fund that, that would be really cool. And honestly, not just for the police department, but for all of the government facilities that we have in Woodstock.
Are you still there, Vanya?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
It just got a little loud. So I'm finished for now.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else want to add?
Can we just ask her to give us a little bit of just like
with the youth?
As a youth, like just to give us a little take, because I think, because that's.
Did you hear that, Vanya?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that what we need to do seems a lot bigger than like what's expected of us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As a youth, I do think that there are a lot of people who really want to be active in the area. I don't know for sure who would like have the energy to do so and have the time to do so. But I can like write it out. Like I'm about to get on a boat, so it's gonna get a little loud. But I can write it out and email it to all of you, like a little blurb if you want.
That would be great. And I sent an email out to everyone from our new email, so you could send that out to everybody.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Great. Okay.
Reggie, I think it's also going to be important for us to hear, once we go through a couple of these iterations, then in turn, here we are saying we want, to speak for myself, I would like to talk about XYZ, likewise from Chief, right? So that, what does he need? Or you know, are any of the officers involved in reimagining, you know, from the inside? Is there something that they'd like to see? I think it'd be good to get some of that input as well at some point.
I agree, and I think Rachel brought that up, touching on that, right, Rachel, at the last meeting, that we look to the, you know, look at our officers too and say, you know, hear from them also. Is that right,
Yeah,
Rach?
well, I definitely, I mean, I feel like, you know, yeah, I think
Yeah. Chief, do you want to share anything, any from your
Or, you know,
thoughts?
you know, but by listening to what you know, I mean, the concerns are all the same. You know, I mean, the mental health issue, you know, that's been in our community. It's been around for many years. We've dealt with it as a therapist department along with family of Woodstock, you know, side by side for a long time. You know, and you know, we struggle with what to do with these people. You know, we try to deal with them on a daily basis. The worst situations we take down for evaluations to the hospital, and then more times than not, we see these people back out on the street. You know, with fuel, and we don't really feel that they're getting the attention. You know, but we're very limited when we can take people, in for your professional, observation, and in an evaluation. You know, so the mobile mental health unit the county created has been very helpful. I'd like to see that expand 24 hours. I believe it stops at 7 o'clock. Which
Waiting for funding.
yeah, which I mean, if we can get that, it would certainly be great. And just Mary, you've been with the family of Woodstock. I talked to Michael. I mean, these issues, with the homelessness. I mean, we do our best to deal with it. And the county, they started the code blue with cold weather last year, or not last year, 2 years ago. It certainly works. We transported people to Kingston, but they want to come back to Woodstock, and they're back in town the next day for 4 days of cold weather. And eventually they didn't want our police vehicles. They didn't want to any rides to a shelter. And we opened up our all the way into the town hall. It's heated. There's bathrooms. It's not the ideal situation, but they're not everything. And and it breaks my heart to see people in this without a place to go. Get out of the weather. But they stay there in a heated hallway till nighttime, till morning. Then you open up, and a great job, family with stuff to help them out. Yeah. Yes, we did just lose a member of our committee just recently, and I really feel that he slipped through the crack with our system, because our correctional facility is not the place to go, but the only way you can get people help is to get them off the street, out, and to actually prevent that from happening, and stuffing a ticket in their pocket every time they do something wrong and leaving them on the street in intoxicated state. It's not the way to do it. And and I've been in law enforcement a long time, and but it's a bail reform has changed our out there, and it was happened to him, in our nearby town. I mean, he should have lived out his life in Woodstock. But it's I just feel that we didn't do any justice to him. And I really like to see that not happen again. But we have other individuals that we're still tickets in their pockets when they act up, and we try to talk to them and tell them behave. If they want help, they're not going to give up the drugs. They're not going to give up the alcohol. Sometimes we have to use other measures, supervision, through probation, through the court system, to get these people help to keep them alive, and we've done of doing that through our local police department, and we've had judges in the past that used to charge somebody overnight to get them dried out, send a release order to get on the street. It's not necessary to hurt them; it's to help them sometimes. And Woodstock, this new jail was never built for Woodstock. Believe me, but we have used it when we really pressed to it, to help people, I'd like to see other options out there. I don't know of any, I mean, there's no way to bring somebody, and get them help if they don't want to give up drinking. But if we get them into a system, that supervise them, it has effect in the past. But that's all above our, that's all been, that's a bad form change that January 1st, and we've seen it with homeless people this past winter. They literally, struggled in severe cold weather, out there, and the shelters, they're great, but it's certainly limited, and not everybody.
Well,
Not everybody wants to. Not everybody can live in a shelter. Full time. They'll go there for a short while, and if they want to come back to Woodstock, and so touching on the mental health, the housing, and we talked about the youth, and I talked to Reggie yesterday, and I've been considering, a youth officer position in our police department of the full time. With extra responsibility, somebody that can really work with our youth, and if we can have some ideas of what that officer should do and can do. The youth center's been all summer, unfortunately, and but we'd like to go forwards, and so that's a future position that we could certainly create with responsibilities, and maybe this committee can come up with some ideas how to get that that into the community and help the youth. We have to have the right officer. It's not just somebody that just wants position. It's going to be somebody that the kids are going to respect. So and I've always strived to get the right officers for our town. And you've sat on the town board, and we really look over very very good, and we lose a lot of police candidates to other departments because we do pick good officers, and we take the time, and we're very cautious about putting anybody in a badge out on the street that of Woodstock, because we do have separate communities, not like our neighboring communities, and I want to look out for people, and I've worked with our on vice policing policy, and Newell's concerns, she's correct, I mean we've had about the Hispanic people for many to protect them, and we never bother them, and we'd like to see them live here, live out there. I've seen generations of people raising their kids, and they've never been the Woodstock Police Department. As long as I'm here, it'll never. So I want to thank Newell for with their Human Rights Commission to really we got a good policy now. Kept our feet to the fire here,
We're going through round 2, Chief. That was awesome. My pleasure.
I could just say, Chief, did you want to say something else, or?
Yeah, we did touch on to the you mentioned about the budget. What I can do is I got a copy of the 20 budget. I can send that to our email. Scan it in. If people want to review that.
Yes.
And our nature of complaints that we've taken so far this year, up to date. I can scan that, and also if people would like to review the and we don't have a big increase of violent crime. It's the domestics, the mental health issues. Is a daily concern of our police department. We've seen an increase, in those issues this summer, and it's sorry to see that families having problems and people mental health issues, but we do deal with it, and even our dispatch department, a separate department than our police, but tries to pick very good dispatchers that can answer when people walk in, and we're not social workers, dispatchers are, but we are very patient, and we listen to people, and it's becoming part of the job. So, and I think Reggie, as you look at the qualifications of our latest police officers, they do have some training working with the public, and we do look for that interaction.
Right.
We can work with the public and help. I think we've got we have very good selection.
Sorry, Chief, but I don't know if hold on, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if just having social work experience is enough. I don't know if if a person does have social work experience, but they're not quite the person with the values that we're looking for, does it really matter?
Yeah, but you know, you having that social work experience prior to you putting your badge on them, you know, I mean, certainly helps us, you know, to get the right person out there, you know, somebody with some experience, you know, that interacting with people. We look at that, you know, as much as possible, you know, and we thought it was mentioned earlier about getting local officers. It's hard to get local officers, you know. I mean, there's only 2 officers right now, which actually, you know, there was a third one, Kyle, in Valkenburg, he just took a full-time job with the department, you know. So but we're back to 2 officers, you know, that live in town, that were born and raised here, you know, and that really, you know, you'll suck it out, you know, for our entire careers, myself and Greg Vanderbilt, you know, and but we do have, you know, officers from neighboring communities, you know. Most of the officer we have is from Greene County, you know, and John Hammer.
Yeah.
I think most of you
Well,
know him.
yeah.
He's a great officer.
That's true. Okay, so I'm gonna step in on this really quickly because 2 things. One is, if they have social work, but that I reiterate that question also to say, like, so what we're going to begin to do here, and what we're being asked to do here, which is it's gonna be a very different and strange and weird conversation, because we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and we're also talking about local community members. And if we were to like look at Woodstock, it does not represent the people of the global majority in any way, like very little, right? And so we're not really, like, we can be looking to say, are we a racist police force? Or we could be moving forward into becoming an anti-racist police force. And in order to do that, we're going to actually have to begin to look at things like, so this is a question I asked another committee member, which is the housing committee. Did you actively seek people of the global majority, otherwise known as people, POC, people of color, or BIPOC, a lot of people are using now, Black, Indigenous people of color. So it's not even a thought around here, because there isn't very much perspective amongst many of the people to actually go out of their way to bring the conversation of diversity and inclusion in. And we're talking about LGBTQ community, we're talking about youth, we're talking about people of color, we're talking about our immigrant community. So all of this, like, we need, it's time. And as Vanya was saying, like, when is the cultural shift happening and how do we do this? This is the pivotal point. And so, like, when and how many times a day do I say thank the universe for our immigrant community? Because we wouldn't have a restaurant that ran worth a damn. We wouldn't have good food. Joshua's, when the Guatemalan chef moved out of Joshua's, we never got the cream of spinach soup we were looking for again. So when do we begin to deify the youth, deify the people of color, deify in other words, lift those people to a place that says it's time to make some major shifts here that include our going out of our way to make those changes. And I also want to ask a question to the chief really quickly, because this is an important question to me. Now, and I'm not going to go all the way back to 20, 30 years, but I'm going to come here now to the current present situation and ask you, if we're going to be having police on and this is a very strong question, and I'm sorry, but this is an uncomfortable conversation that we were asked by the governor to have. Why isn't David Downs on the force right now? In a police, in a not full-time position, because he knows all of us. He knows the town, he knows the community, he knows the community members, and now he has a younger person who know. And so, how come he's not hasn't been able to get back onto the force for a,
Because when he retired, it was 7 years ago. We had no space for another officer at the time. I mean, we have a total maximum number of officers that were allowed. Which we have 10 officers and 10 part-time. And
right, but we've
we
hired
have
several police officers since then, part-time. And he's tried to get back on the force part-time. So why hasn't he been able to get back on the force? Because the last time I had a conversation with him, it was well after the last 7 years. It was probably like 4 years ago. And he said that he was not able to, that there was no space. So when we are now considering when we have to, or if we are looking at part-time police officers ever again, will we be going out of our way to bring back an officer who says, I would like to return, who knows us? When does that happen?
I'm sorry, what officer is that?
His name is David Downs. He was on the force for many years, and he knows us well, and he was a good cop. And he retired, and he would like to be doing, and he's put bids in to return, and hasn't been able to. And so, but since then, we have hired people who don't know our community members from outside of the community. Greene County, like, where are we going to find an anti-oppressive Greene County police officer who's already considering anti-oppression in their mind? Like, how's that going to work? Let's get real here.
I think a more interesting question, not more interesting, but I think a more particular question is, how do we make the police officers that are already on the force anti-racist, actively anti-racist, rather than just passively not racist?
Well,
how do we foster that as a community?
Mm-hmm. Can I just jump in quickly? Just a couple things. One, we're at 5:06, not that this stuff. One, I don't know if the chief can answer, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but the personnel issue, and maybe, Rachel and Chief, you guys could talk. But I hear the question, and but I don't know, if the chief can really speak to that. Also, as far as making people anti-racist, you don't make anyone do anything, to be honest. Somebody can take a diversity training. I've given anti-harassment trainings, cultural, bias, things like that. And can have someone sit in that training twice a year. I can't make you take it in to really understand. Right? So that is deeper work. And we can't, even in this committee, even with all the trainings and things, that is not something. I can't give you a brain transplant or a heart transplant, or spiritual transplant and make you be open. I think we can create an environment and a community where people that, disagree with those things feel less comfortable. And I'd like to see that, but can I make everybody who's racist not be racist? I can't. I can't do that. That's bigger than any committee. That's bigger than any law. And it's going to be definitely outside of the scope of the work that we're doing. But I think certainly, again, creating a culture here, or expanding in some ways on what's already here and recreating or, rethinking things, I think it's possible to create where people may not even want to come to Woodstock because they know, hey, they're not going to tolerate this in their community. I want to get us not back on track, because these things are important, but I want to, sorry, let me just grab my notes. I know the chief brought up some things that we talked about yesterday as far as information for this group. This is a lot here, and I think what I'll be doing is reaching out to you individually before our next meeting, just to talk more as we try to sort this out, because this is a huge task, and it is more than saying, we won't allow this, we won't allow this. It's much bigger than that, right? And even as we sit here in this meeting, so much comes up that I don't know if anyone else's brain is exploding a little bit. Mine is just a little bit. It's not on the screen, but it's a lot. The chief is going to get us, we talked yesterday about getting our 2019 and 2020 budget,
Yes.
right, and sending that out to the group. Bear with me one second. I think I'm gonna turn back to a page. The 2019, 2020 budget, our complaints, Chief, for the past year.
Yes.
Would it be possible, I know we talked about doing January until, now to present date, but could we also look at the previous year just to get, would that be possible to get us that information? Was that?
Sure. Yeah, I can certainly. It's just, you want to see the complaints for 2019?
Mm-hmm. Just to give us more. I mean, there's a little bit more with that full year's history. I know John, I think almost everybody that spoke, Rachel, Anula brought this up, talking about a breakdown of, where is it? Basically the types of calls. So are they criminal versus, who was that? I'm looking for my notes on it. They asked about criminal versus like mental health.
Yeah, or even transporting the elderly. So those
So those kind of like, what are the calls that that the department's getting that are not involving, criminal versus other areas, and some sort of breakdown of that, if it's around either mental health or welfare, safety checks, stuff like that.
And I'd also like to know, Reggie and Chief, if there's a way to break this information down by the population that it comes from. I don't know if that's possible if we keep those kinds of statistics, but if we have some kind of breakdown of who originates these complaints, I think that gives us information about where other kinds of community work can happen. And I really want to say stigma is a big piece of this on everything that we've talked about, and it needs to be something we also talk about. How do we destigmatize all these things as well?
And I'm seeing here in the TAM that you wrote, you have 8 social work interns who can do research on existing programs in other communities, as well as work on effective trainings. Great,
yes, I need to give them work because family has had to limit the amount of people we can have on site. I've had to turn away 25 interns this year because people cannot find internships. So I have more than I can handle and need to give them this kind of community-based program. So we can do research on some of the programs that are listed in the governor's mandate here for us. Also other communities that might have things that we would be interested in, as well as what is effective training. We've talked about how culture is hard to change. It's not just a one-shot deal. You go to a training and then you're done.
It's long term.
Yeah, this is a project, not work. It's ongoing. And what's effective in that, and how do we develop those kinds of effective things? And youth, gotta love them right here, right now.
Right.
I'd like to just make a point, Reggie. Spoke about it yesterday with our detective. We get our mental health calls for service. We also get a good many people that call us on the phone and walk through the door that we just talk to on a daily basis. We see them out front, and and we don't exactly make a case report, just daily interaction. And this, what they need, they need people to come in, and we want them to feel welcome. Whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, our doors just like over the family, we've always been a support service for people that we don't support as many in mental health incidents to the hospital as other jurisdictions. We deal with them on a daily basis, and a lot of times they're good for a day, 2 days, a week, and before another they come. Some people, Puppy John used to call us, he was on a daily basis. He moved to Perhonkson, and he was with us, and we'd have a conversation with him, and he lived 30 miles away, but he was part of our community, even elsewhere. And we were actually sorry to see him leave. He lived 30 years, and it was sorry to see him, at tail end of his life, to live, a whole different area.
We couldn't find a place local for him to live, and we couldn't
Right.
see him live on the streets and in a tent beside family anymore. And
No.
that's part of the larger conversation here is how
Yeah.
do we create a community that can support everyone?
Yeah.
That's big. And this is an and moment. It's not either or. Either we do what the state wants us to do,
Right.
or we do what we want to do. We
No.
have the capacity here to create how to do this and make it uniquely our own, and invite in as much collaboration and vision from everybody as possible. I'm really excited by that.
Yeah.
Agreed. Anula, I know has to go in a minute, and I'm going to try to get us all off this call soon. Anula, though, has a question. Is there anything in writing to explain the mobile mental health support program? I can look that, John, unless you said you had a...
Jonathan, yeah.
I have the ex-director of the mobile mental health out here on the balcony, if you'd like her to come in and explain it.
Schedule a separate Zoom.
I think not for, we'd have to, you know, actually, if you have that close connection with them, then we could have that person maybe speak to us, speak to our group.
And Tamara,
yes,
quick
ma'am.
question. Would family like to have a mobile unit?
Based out of Woodstock?
It's something I thought about because we used to do more street outreach work. We'd have to think a lot about that and how that would work. There are other systems that maybe we could create volunteer teams that could do that kind of work for the community. And I love that idea. We also, family has programs like the 180 Restorative Justice Program for youth in the county. And we may want to look at restorative justice programs for this. And we have an intern who is a social work intern who works for the 180 program. So she's someone who could develop something for our community. I think this is a time to look at how to expand family services, although it's also at a time when volunteerism is very difficult. And because of COVID, and also because of the economic situation that we're all in, and the inability to support oneself and do a lot of volunteerism. So while it's very meaningful work, finances are a reality here.
Yeah, and let's also speak to the part where it's not just that it's the financial, you know, as survival burnout of the existing community, which is being thinned out at a rapid pace. That's something we need to continue to bring to the top of this conversation, which is we don't have a volunteer community because we don't have much of a community. We have empty homes that are now maybe being filled since post-COVID, but this COVID flight is affecting the fact that our community is thinning out. And so how do we actually, this is why we need to look at this in the holistic manner, because this is it. And one other quick thing to mention is that I work with some badasses in Oakland, and it's a city. But one of my partners in a restorative justice architecture firm that I work with, who is building, their vision is to build a restorative justice city, okay, that actually focuses on finding out what the community needs, how the community would move forward together, how the community, the existing community, in our case, our community of color is like a rainbow flavor, right? What does the community need? What is the community, how could that be self-sustaining?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we bring that? Because if you want to talk about restorative justice, you could do trainings, but if you want to talk about restorative justice, you have to build equity centers. You have to create equity for the people in the community that make the community the awesome community it is. And if the community doesn't have equity, and the jobs in the community and the design of the community is such that you be the servant of the people who come and go and use your services but don't ever volunteer within them, then you end up with a community that is hollowed out. And this morning I woke up and what came to my mind was like, Woodstock is like a hollow shell of a really good idea that somebody didn't follow through on. We're like, we have this beautiful pieces of like what Tamara does, what family does, what's happening in parts of this community are so special, but they're remnants of what once was. And so now we have an opportunity to think and go, okay, so how are we going to deal with this? Who just moved into our community? We might need to actually invite those people out and meet these people. Are they young? Are they old? Do they have kids? Do they not? There was a 300% uptick in, I think it was the day schools enrollment. Who lives here now? Who are we policing? We don't even know.
We don't know, and we'll find out. Probably. I mean,
it could take years. They could be gone before we find out. How do we create and keep a volunteer force to support all the people who, the only people left from the local community, really, in general, are people who need the support? So then you start talking about reciprocal exchange. You start talking about, like, forget that, like, time banks. You start talking about, like, how do we come together and support each other? Who's sitting on too much land? Jogger John is about to get, it was because Jeff kept breaking into his house, as well as Travis. I'm sorry, I'm outing people, but some other local people who were like breaking into John's house and selling drugs out of his house. And he runs up the mountain to get away from the people that are utilizing his house because family is closed. So I have his sisters calling me and saying, how do we help John? Because he's going to get kicked out of Rupco because there's people in there trying to take showers. Meanwhile, Gail lives next door and she can't have people partying and smoking cigarettes. Her lungs are freaking horribly in horrible shape. This is Woodstock. What are we going to do here?
Right. Time. Well, yes.
We can't leave it on Chief. We can't leave it on Tamara and family. We have to look at what this community is, who's in it, how much privilege is here. Like, let's get straight. We can wrap this up with real. Woodstock is full of a lot of very privileged, non-melanated people who do not ever consider. Some of them are my best friends. I had a person come up to me and say, Rachel, did you ever want to tell us you were brown? We didn't see color. Now my best friend, she's brown, social justice. Oh my God, I'm going to take 45 minutes of your time so that I don't feel guilty about the fact that I never honored who you were as a person. This is what I deal with on a regular basis. My phone my inbox rings off the hook with people when George Floyd was killed. Do you know how many people texted me to tell me they weren't racist? I had a woman send me a message about how her first kiss was a black man and her first girl kiss was a black man, and she was a stripper, and she has no privilege. So here's what I'm saying. This is real.
Yeah. We
live in a community that does not see color. If you don't see color, then you don't see me. We live with people who would rather have a pretty view than know that there's somebody next door that needs help. They want to put the trees between it. What are we not going to leave on the chief to have to deal with? Is a bulk of most of your work dealing with homeless people?
I love this. I have to bounce because I've got a 5:30 meeting and I've got 3 cats to feed. I'm so sorry.
Love you, Anula. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you. Rachel, if you would like to talk separately about the idea of active anti-racism within the community and how to foster that as like a thing, I'd love to talk about that with you.
And I can, you know what? I'll give you both. I'll group text so you can get numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, sure. I'm happy to continue this conversation, but as I was beginning to get off on,
Rach, I'm just sorry.
San Francisco has a decolonization department in their police force.
To Oakland?
San Francisco.
Okay.
And we have access to them through my people. We need a decolonization department in this town, in our municipal department, because that will also support
what I was trying
this conversation. Because
I was
it's all
trying to
part of
allude
this.
to doing that.
And we may need a bigger group And we may need to be doing breakouts that handle different issues that are coming up within this conversation.
I'd like to say one, Reggie. I've worked with this police department for a long time. I've lived in this town all my life. I've never seen racial issues, within this department.
Which, I mean, Chief, just say, in all fairness, you may not see them. You may not see them because you may not experience them.
Since we're talking about police reform, if we don't have a problem here, I don't want people pointing fingers at us that we have a problem because
we're not pointing fingers, Chief.
I've never seen one, Rachel.
We've been talking about this. No. I'm going to respond to this. Chief, we had this conversation actually a few months ago when we were getting up to wake up and look at what was next. And this is what's next. This is where we begin to recognize that this conversation that we're having here does not imply that you or the police department is racist. What it implies is that we need to do some work across all communities, all across this country, to address the actual racist issues that are happening in the structures within how we are working and living and moving forward. And we are dealing with situations where people don't even realize that the microaggressive tendencies that have been domesticated into American society create experiences for people of the global majority, people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, that are traumatizing, that are exhausting, that are draining, and that are literally breaking down communities like our own has been broken down. And we have to come to a place where we recognize that just because we are not someone who chooses to fear people of color, although Woodstock has raised young women to fear Black men by allowing Delhi and Lincoln to run around for the last 30 years, we have to address the reality. We live in racist systems that were designed to erase and extract my people. And if we don't address the systems that we are living in now, we will not be moving forward into the next millennium, changing any paradigms. And we can check off some stuff on this list, and we can say we did the thing, and we can tell the governor that we went through the list. But if we don't address the fact that Woodstock is a extremely white privileged community that has extremely large amounts of micro and macro aggressive racist tendencies throughout the structure, the build, the design, the municipal governance, we're not going anywhere. This conversation might as well end. We are not outwardly racist as a town, as a community. We actually boast being some kind of like hippie freaking Mecca. We boast being a music and arts community, and we have like one gallery in town and nowhere to listen to music. So we have to address the truth of who we are as a community, which is the youth already told you in June, welcome to Woodstock. What did they say? White privilege? Privilege and that's how the kids look. The kids can see it clearly. We have to look at ourselves as a community. We are not diverse, period. Look in Wikipedia. It's a 96 to 8% white community. And the people who aren't, 90% of those people are cleaning toilets, they are cleaning yards, or they're hanging off the side of somebody's cliff. This town is not diverse, and we have to wake up.
Thank you, Rachel. Two things before, because we've gone. This has been stuff. This stuff is going to come up, so we have to be real, and we can discuss more one-on-one. I'm sure we can discuss privately and reach out to each other. I encourage you to do that. Rachel, what? You're on mute. You're on mute, Rachel.
This is a public meeting.
Yes, so speaking of,
it should continue to be public, and we have to address the fact.
Well, yes, Rachel, wait a minute. Hold on, Rachel. I'm not saying that, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that if people still, I'm not saying there's no harm in having a conversation also beyond this. I'm not saying that. So That's not what I'm saying. I will be reaching out to folks individually There is a town hall with Ulster County on reform, a town hall on justice on Monday from 6 to 8. I could send that link to everyone because you have to register for it. So I think that'll be just good information, again, just to help us as we are in the very beginning of this process. And it is a lot. So I can send that email out to everyone. And also send out an email from looking at the policies that the chief and I just started to look at, that we as a committee should look at. Either I'll send that out or ask Ashley to send it out. There's another thing that I'm losing my train of thought now. We did not get to discuss the survey, but I can think in another email, just starting to generate questions. I can just send out that first email with the survey questions and the topic, and we can just start, because we've got to at least start thinking about questions. Not that we have to have it all figured out by next week, but I'll start that email also. There is something else that I cannot think of right now, but we will be in touch through email. Feel free to reach out. The public. So definitely they need to be invited. In the plan, there's a mandate, I don't know if I'll use that word, that we have listening sessions a little bit further down the road, but they can witness these meetings. So I'll make sure that we're sending that out and posting it at least, so that at least the public can observe and hear these conversations. I don't think we'll have space in every meeting for a public to be heard necessarily, but because we can see just amongst ourselves, we could probably go on for 2 more hours. So we have to have some kind of framework around that, and we can talk about it more as we go on. I have to go because I have another meeting right now. But Rachel, can you do 15 seconds? Yeah.
Who's taking notes?
Ashley is.
Okay, great. Awesome. Can you send those notes, or do you take them on a Google Doc that you can just take them on the same place and we'll just have them running and we can go to them?
We don't really use Google Docs. I can try to, but I don't have an account. I have to make an account. Typically I do formal minutes because it is a community.
Okay.
They get posted to the website.
Perfect.
Okay.
Can you send them to us when you post
so what I'll
them?
do is I'll type up the minutes and then I'll send them to the entire group, and I'll also post them on the website so they're accessible to the public as well.
Thank you so much. And I'll make a Google Doc that we can have them, because a lot of that can help us with our notes and things.
And we can be adding in ideas and comments and things. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for facilitating.
All right. Good night.
Thank you for notes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Chief. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, and we'll talk to everybody next Thursday again, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry to be the hard one, but I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, that's all right. We're here for it. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
That's why we're here.
But the point is, we have to be able to have hard conversations and walk out knowing that the hard stuff is the hard stuff, but that has nothing to do with who we are and how much we care or relate or appreciate each other, because we do. And again, this is not about you or our force or anything. We just need to, it's about looking at the systems that we've been.
Yes, and uncomfortable stuff. It doesn't feel good. So we won't walk away from these meetings warm and fuzzies, probably. But I think generating some thought, kind of expanding beyond maybe the way we've been thinking about certain things. So thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night.
All right.